A new game-breaking bug is in the wild and has rapidly been picking up pace, and today alone I've received several separate reports about it. The secret is out, and it's being used and abused in matches. I won't share exactly how to do it, but I'll give you a gist of it because it's needed to understand what's going wrong. In short, you reconnect to a server you're already on, you spam a button, but not too much, and if you hear a water splash sound, something like this, you know it's worked, and you'll probably start the next round somewhere that you shouldn't have. I believe it's a similar exploit to the ones that the coaches were exploiting a few years ago, since I'm seeing people spawning in the same places. Dotted about some of the maps are point view control entities. In older games like Counter-Strike Source, it used to cycle between these view angles as you were joining the server and picking a team. And while in CSGO we don't see this perspective anymore, apparently it still puts your position in the level to one of these entities. There's one here on Overpass, and sure enough, people are spawning here. There's one just here up middle on Mirage. And what do you know, people are spawning there too. And people are spawning behind this fence on Nuke, which is where a view control entity just happens to be as well. You get the idea. And on maps without a view control entity, it seems to pick a random player spawn spot instead. On Cache, it uses one of the wingman spawns, which has its own uses. Source's jankiness truly is a thing of wonder. When this exploit takes place, a water splash sound is played. I've known about this mysterious phenomenon for decades, probably back about 60 years to when Source was new. In 2004. It used to occur when a teammate came back from being AFK. And I spoke with Zul to get to the bottom of this, and he said that back in 1.6, being in the void outside of the map was the same as being underwater. So get this, when it finally re-establishes connection with a player, the burning question the server has is the player underwater? And upon discovering that they aren't, it lets off a huge sigh of relief and apparently a bit of liquid in the form of a water splash sound. It looks like even the devs got confused about this at one point and wrote some stuff to try and explain it. But that's what it is. Apparently it'll do the same for anything in this state, not just the players. What's interesting about this is that it's not just the person doing the exploit who hears this splashing sound. Other people can hear it as well. In fact, one of the people who reached out to me about this exploit said that they heard it in a wingman game on Cobble, which made me question how well I knew the game because I was sure there wasn't any water on that map. So yeah, I think that's what it is. So if you hear a splashy sound at the start of a round, beware that players might be spawning where they shouldn't be. And I'll end this video by showing you the locations of all of these start points on main defuse maps, so you know what to look out for. And it turns out that there is a specific spawn spot for every map, even ones without a view control entity. You can find it by typing get pos just after the map is loaded, but before you've joined a team. On Ancient, it's above T-spawn just here. Now you're stuck outside of the playable level, but you can still run about this small section here. However, you spawn in direct view of the terrorists, which will probably not work out in your favour. So it's of limited use since you can't participate in the map's objectives. But what a great spot to guard T-spawn from. Cache is an interesting one. This map doesn't have a view control entity to spawn from, but using the getPos command spawns me here, which is where one of the wingman spawn points is situated instead. Using this as CT could devastate an unsuspecting T-rush, though it is possible that you'll be seen from certain spawns during buy time. And as terrorists, this is a great spot to spawn from, as it opens up a very interesting possibility. Since it lets you start closer to stuff, it'll throw off the timings for CTs, taking them by surprise. And imagine if both a T and CT player spawned here at the same time. Everyone would be surprised. Dust 2 is another map without a point view control entity, and again it seems to pick a player spawn instead. This won't change much for terrorists since it's one of theirs, but it would screw a CT who uses it since they'd find themselves stuck at T-spawn in full view of everyone. Inferno's view control entity at bombsite B is very nearly a very good and overpowered spot to start on, but I couldn't find a way of freeing myself from this archway, so I was left dangling in the air, unable even to shoot straight. Of course, it depends if you start where the view control is or on the ground below it. If the latter, then it's a very overpowered spot. But if it's the former, then this exploit isn't as useful as it looks. Mirage's mid-spawn has become infamous, and with good reason. Because spawning on such a central spot of the map benefits anybody who starts here. You could reach sites sooner as a terrorist, or lie in wait as CT to thwart a mid-push. It's a great spot. 10 out of 10 would recommend exploiting it on Mirage. Nuke? Well, like I said with Inferno, I don't know if the exploit spawns you in the air or on the ground below it. But if you start in the air, then you'll fall and lose 40 health. But it might still be worth it. I don't think you can get back into the level from here, but you're given plenty of freedom to explore. And things aren't quite how they seem, because most of the stuff beyond the play area doesn't appear to have collisions of any sort. As a CT, I suppose you could use this spot to destroy the terrorists in the first few seconds of a round, or as terrorists, you could use this exploit to get an unusual position to pick CTs off from. So yeah, Nuke is an interesting one. Overpass spawns you inside a solid invisible wall, but you can still shoot back into the level from there, and you do get a lot of info about water. I wouldn't recommend it as terrorists, but CTs might find a sneak attack from this spot useful from time to time, since it's well hidden from the routes that terrorists will approach this spot from, and you might be able to get a few shots off from a shotgun or something similar before they return the favour. Train puts you at bomb site A, in a very useful spot for both teams to use. You could get the bomb planted before CTs even reach the site. Which is so not Rainbow Rhythms. And lastly, Vertigo spawns you in this pathetic spot, just outside of T spawn. As a CT, you'd be instantly seen and killed, but as terrorists, it might put you fractionally closer to B for a rush of some kind, but not by much. But it's about as close to being useless as it's possible to get with what's otherwise an enormously powerful exploit. It just isn't worth the hassle on Vertigo. But it is a good spot for throwing yourself off the side from. So what can Valve do about this? They could fix it. Or they could make it so that there's just one view control entity per level, in a completely useless or suicidal position, since that would punish those who exploit this or trigger it by mistake. That would show them.